Hi, I'm Char the Explorer, and today I want to talk about off-grid living. When I first started flipping land back in 2001, I had people ask me, can you live off-grid? And that to me meant that did you have to be connected to the power grid? And I had heard that there were several communities, especially in the Florida area, that you had to connect to the power grid. You could not live in a solar or generator for your power. And that's still true in many cities today. You just can't put a noisy generator outside to run your house. And so off-grid over the years has really morphed into being a different ballgame altogether. And all day long I have people call me and say, hey, I want to go live off-grid. So my question to them is, what is your version of what is off-grid? So I wanted to talk a little bit about off-grid, and if you're out there looking for a piece of property, what are you really wading through? So there's a lot of different agencies and even different documents that can dictate what you can and can't do with a piece of property. First of all, there's the county zoning, and that will include things like how many homes can you build, how big could it be, how much square footage do you have to build. Usually a lot of the counties in the rural areas don't really have a minimum square footage, but rather they revert to what the state standard building code is. So that's going to say something along the lines of you have to be able to carry a wind storm and a snow load, and it has to be strapped, and those are something for safety purposes so it doesn't get blown over when a dust devil comes by. And typically those are at least 350 square feet by the time you get something that is strapped that you can live in, and you can get a building permit to live in that. There are other types of things that are also considered a livable structure, such as some of the RVs out there, like a park model, other alternative style little homes made out of shipping containers, earth ships. So there are things that are structurally engineered, but if you want to go living in it, you have to be able to get a building permit at the county level. So there's your first thing. How do you go about getting that? Well, you're going to go in there and they're going to want to talk to you about your septic. Do you have a source of septic? And that opens up all different kinds of conversations. So traditional septic, where you have a septic tank and you have a leach field. But then the off-gridders get more into composting or even worm toilets. Somebody wanted to talk to me about worm toilets once, and that was probably 20 years ago, and I've never, ever had a need to discuss worm toilets with anybody ever again. But it is a way that people would use to have a septic, and that's ran by the state. So you need to contact the state to find out what are other options when it comes to septic. And then how are you going to feed that septic the water? So you have to have a water system with it. Traditionally, we have a well. Wells are very expensive depending on what state you're in. A cheap state is probably 15 to 20,000 and gets upwards to 40,000 in other states. But there's also holding tanks, water tank systems, where you haul your water from a public source. So a lot of small communities have community wells, and you have one of those big bladder tanks on a trailer or on the back of your truck. You go up, you get to the community well, you fill up your big holding tank, you take it back home, and you transfer that into your holding tank. And then your holding tank feeds into your septic system. And to get a building permit, you have to have a source of water that meets the state guidelines or even the county guidelines to satisfy that septic. So some states, some counties say, yeah, you can use a holding tank for your water. Years ago, when I first started dealing in land, I came across a place in Kansas, and the entire subdivision was built on holding tanks that were in the ground. So you had your black water in the ground, and you also had your fresh water in the ground. There was companies that came and pumped out your black water, your septic, your black water, and also would fill up your freshwater systems for you. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. And so it's not new technology. That was a subdivision I'd found 20 years ago. Yet we still seem to have a lot of counties out there that are very, very restrictive on living alternatively. Um, and so while you're out there trying to weed through things, you've got your county zoning, but you also could have your CCRs, your community covenants and restrictions. And that's the big thing where it could say, hey, you have to paint your house red, or you have to paint your house blue. And you go, what? Why do I have to only have my fence so high? Or why can I, those are your covenants are filed at the point where it is subdivided, and they're filed at the county, and they are on top of the county zoning. Years ago, some of the stuff I've seen filed actually said you could go camping in your RV there, you can live in your RV. So as over the years, as county zoning has changed, those get grandfathered in. So sometimes CCRs can actually be really helpful when we're talking really old CCRs. So again, those are kind of hard to find sometimes. You might have to go to the county itself and dig through the old county records going back to the point where it was subdivided. A lot of counties, though, if you go to the recorder's office, they do have those documents. They've kind of gotten them readily available because so many people come in and request them. But you better be reading those before you buy it, or at least know if they exist even. People buy properties and don't even know that there's covenants on it on top of the county zoning. So over the years, I have come to find out what the violations are because I've been popped a lot. I have held many contracts over the years, and probably within the first 4 or 5 years of selling land on contract, I decided not to let people live on the land because I was just having problems all the time. So I decided I would share a few of the things that I've been popped for. Someone was pulling water out of the creek for their RV, and they had a big black pipe stuck down into the creek, and they were using a generator to suck that up. And I got a little letter from the Nevada State Environmental Department letting me know that I couldn't do that. Okay, so I went out there and they stopped doing that. I had about 50 campers on a piece of property up in Klamath County, Oregon once, and I got a call from the zoning guy, and he said, hey, Char, are you aware that you got about 50 people up on a piece of property? And I said, no, I'm not aware of that. And he's like, okay, well, I'll take the sheriffs up there with me because it is quite a spread going up there. So you can't just pull up your RVs and have 50 RVs. What are you doing for your septic up there? Okay. I had somebody that was living in an RV on a piece of property, and they had stuck their RV black water, your gray water, black water. We're talking about toilet water, water from your sink. Those were just being stuck in tanks in the ground, like little holding tanks, bladder tanks, and no leach field. And again, I got a nice little letter from New Mexico State Environmental Department letting me know I was out of compliance with that one too. And then I got a letter from Sandoval County letting me know that I was out of compliance, and that was the zoning department, because I had somebody in an RV just letting it dump right into the ground, and there was septic running across the road. Granted, it was a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, but it was pretty nasty looking. Anyway, after all is said and done with all those problems, I've just done my best to call them and say, hey, I'm on my way to check it out. And that's all they really want. They want you to be in compliance. I've never, ever received a fine yet. And it has taken, one of them took about 2 years to clean up before all was said and done. So when you're out there and you're saying you want to go live off grid, and you're going out into a community and you're seeing that other people are out there doing what you want to do, that doesn't mean that it's compliant with the county zoning. And I've definitely seen over the last few years the counties coming through, and for the first time ever, sometimes people are getting letters that say, you do not have a building permit. You have to remove that mobile home from your property or you're going to get a fine. The 13 RVs you have on your property, you have to remove them. The cars that are on your property that don't run and don't have current tabs, you have to move them. So yeah, it is getting tougher and tougher out there as counties try to keep up with their zoning laws as a way to combat what's going on in the middle of America. We have major drug problems in the middle of nowhere, and how do they deal with it? I'm on both sides of it. I love middle of nowhere. I love going and looking at land. I love rural valleys and places that nobody has been to for a long time. Yet, even I see the reasons that we have some rules. That's my take on it. Anyway, I was just going to mention a few things too, though. Okay, like traditional septics, they have a leach field, but there's other types of alternative systems. I've heard that in New Mexico, you can now get a composting toilet. So you better know that if off-grid means that you can have a composting toilet, because again, you call the county and you say, I want to live off-grid, and they're like, yeah, you can live off-grid here. Yeah, because they were like me and they were answering whether or not you had to be connected to the power grid. Okay, so make sure that you're asking the right questions, and trying to figure things out is half your battle. These days, I see people camping on BLM land, and they're using holding tanks. And there's service providers that if you tell them your GPS coordinates, they'll come change out your water and give you fresh water and take your dirty waters away for you. And I certainly see gorgeous, beautiful, massive homes these days that are totally set up off grid. They've got solar like you can't imagine. I myself have flipped properties where the well was ran on a solar system. They're really cool. And it's just really interesting to think that you can go anywhere anymore and use alternative types to do what you want. But just make sure that when you're out there asking those questions, that you're speaking the right language. Good luck.